You're listening to 17 Carat K-Pop, the show that's a little bit of everything with a K-pop twist. Visit 17caratkpop.weebly.com for more information about the show. That's 17caratkpop.weebly.com. Enjoy the show! Hello everybody, welcome back to 17 Carat K-Pop. Today on the show, I did a mini sociology project of my own, as I am known to do. I nerd out over research, so I found a way to quantify and content code and analyze a bunch of articles and news coverage about KCON over the years. And I want to share with you my results of this small little study I did of how Western media outlets have covered KCON, the patterns I've noticed, things that surprised me, things that didn't, for better and for worse. But before we talk about KCON over the years, I do have some recommendations for you this week. Ace just dropped a mini docuseries, documentary movie style, hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes-ish, behind the scenes type of video content. I don't want to say any more because I just want to encourage you to check it out for yourself, but they dropped it this morning, so check out Ace's official YouTube channel. It officially was actually streaming a while ago, but the last time I checked before recording, it's still available to watch, even though the stream is technically ended, so check it out before it is gone, although there are not English subtitles that I saw last I checked, which was a few minutes ago, but I still think Ace is just such a fun group. Their chemistry with each other is great to watch. They're just adorable, so I would still recommend checking that out if you can. Other things that I recommend this week, definitely loving Jessie's New Nana challenge, watching the dance challenge videos, and the whole New EP is really just, it slaps, it goes off, and I missed her. I honestly think I might like this comeback more than Gucci, and that's saying a lot. So Jessie is just back, and I'm so happy about that. Also, I've been checking out this new to me artist this week called Leenzy, Leenzy, and I really like her voice. It reminds me of Lehigh a little bit, but it's also just unique in its own way. But if you're a fan of Lehigh's sound, I think you'll like Leenzy, especially Peter Pan. That's probably her best song. So definitely an artist who I think deserves more love and attention. So check that out. Also, 17 Carat K-Pop has an official website right now, which you probably know if you didn't skip through the intro to this episode. So 17caratkpop.weebly.com. There I have a way for you to get familiar with the show if you're new to it or want to introduce someone else to it. So you can sort episodes by release date, so you can see all of them there, or you can sort based on category if you prefer to listen to the history-based episodes, the ones that focus on marketing and economics of the industry, the ones that focus on C-pop or J-pop, the interviews I do, the ones that focus on technology and artificial intelligence and robotics and the digital world, the ones that focus on fandom culture and pop culture commentary. They all have their own category you can look at on the site now. You can also check out a place to sign up for newsletter alerts. I will have lots of bonus content coming in the future on the site. This is only the beginning of it. I have lots in store for it, lots of bonus content that didn't make it into the full cut of the episode, so you can check out that stuff as it gets released through newsletter exclusives. And of course, I hope to grow my audience enough in the future where I can have more fan input on the show, do surveys, polls, overall a place. I'd love for it to turn into a site that is like a go-to place for fans to gather and create a group chat of sorts to make fan projects happen, kind of a gathering place of sorts for fan events. I know there are obviously already places for that, but I would love to be a part of that as well. So that's the latest for the show. Very exciting to hopefully see the show continue to grow. And if you are new to the show and like the sound of today's episode, I would highly recommend the most relevant episodes for being compatible with what we're going to talk about today are my episodes called Big Hit the Road and TikTok Getting Closer. That episode is about UK pop and these trends of non-Koreans trying to be K-pop stars and all the problems I have with that. And so if you want that kind of cultural critique episode where I really go off more, feel free to check out TikTok Getting Closer. Big Hit the Road also addresses some of those issues that we're going to talk about today and in future episodes about pop music, rock music, in the ways those are associated with masculinity and femininity and how that affects their perceived appeal. So that will be more relevant for future episodes and not today's, but it's just a little teaser, a preview of what we're going to talk about more in depth in the coming weeks or days here, so stick around for that. Alright, before we get to my KCON project, here are your quick headlines for the day. We're going to start with the less exciting stuff. So Hanbin of VIX, he has officially left the group. There were rumors that he was going to leave actually starting a while ago. He, back in February, had a Twitch stream where he was saying a lot of derogatory things towards his juniors in the industry. Fans were really outraged by that, and actually even during the Twitch stream, his management actually knocked on his door and he got up to answer. So they really were on the ball, ready to silence him after these comments. So there's a whole debate about how much he was censored and how much was too far. But the story basically now is that he's decided to leave the group. It's characterized as very amicable, and they both decided it would be best for the group's image for him to not be associated with the group anymore. So I do think it sounds like it's not a huge, like, see you in court situation. It does seem like they honestly amicably went separate ways. And I honestly do think that VIX was, well, I mean, they're one of the groups, it's kind of like BAP, where they don't really say they're splitting up, but it seems pretty clear that they're kind of done. So they're like, oh no, it's not really like disbanding technically, we'll reunite someday, but it's said in that way that is kind of just like a way to lessen the blow of the news for fans, basically. So, I mean, not to say that VIX won't get back together, but I didn't see it even before this controversy, so that's just my take on it. But the company's official statement says VIX will try to continue on as a 5-member group in the future. The only statement as of recording time released by a member specifically addressing this was Ravi, who on Instagram basically said that he doesn't have much to say right now, asks for understanding with that. So I'll keep you posted for the show. Other sad news, One the Nine has officially ended their contract period. One the Nine is over. It's very much reminding me of my feelings when Wanna One disbanded all too soon. But at least we got a goodbye single from them, so it was a nice send-off. It wasn't a total surprise. We kind of knew this would happen. Teen Top's Chunji is entering the military this Monday, August 10th. So there's a lot to miss right now. Just a little more sad news before we get to the good stuff. So the girl group Busters is going through a reinvention period where a few of the members have voiced their disappointment with the company, and it sounds like another amicable split here where 3 of the members just were able to exit their contracts and basically just said that this idol life isn't for them. All the fun has been taken out of it for them, and so they are no longer going to focus on being famous singers as part of this group. And so the group is going to try rebranding. They're having an interesting strategy where they're not just rebranding, but before they get to rebrand and cast in some new people, or at least one new member, before they can do that casting, which is probably delayed due to the virus and that affecting audition plans and all of that, they're going to have a tentative, like, in-between transition group. So Busters Beta is the group that's basically going to, it's like a subunit that's going to fill in for the real Busters until the rebranded group Power Busters officially is born with new members. So they're going through some shifts right now and kind of a temporary hiatus, but not really because of this subunit. So interesting strategy to keep their name out there in the meantime. Other sad news, unfortunately, this is really sad. A member of 2AM Sulon, he caused a fatal car crash when he was driving late at night in the rain, and someone was walking when the light was red, and so he hit the jaywalker. He did try to call the paramedics and waited, at the scene to get him medical attention, but it was too late, and by the time he arrived, the victim actually was basically near death and passed away on the way to the hospital. So it sounds like Sulon is cooperating with investigations about this, and so what happens if there are legal issues involved with the victim's family remains to be seen, but we will see. Alright, let's get to the better news. So Super M is coming back. This is actually bittersweet because I still really want Jongin to get his solo comeback, which he probably would if not for Super M, but that's a rant for another day. But it is exciting. Super M is coming back, and so September is going to be chock full of new Super M content. And aside from their next album and a few pre-album release singles, they will also have their first reality show, Mtopia, coming September 23rd, which you can watch for free on YouTube and through the Wave app if you're into that. So that will be very exciting. Also, Super M is clearly going to focus on USA promo more because just the other day, SM Entertainment officially opened up a USA-themed English Twitter account. So that's a very big deal. And I just think that they're really going to push Super M for the USA. And one more quick thing for Super M fans. If you didn't check out a few episodes ago, I had a whole episode dedicated to music video theories, and I talked about the ways that NCT and Super M storylines are connected. Well, I spotted another Easter egg based on what I said in that theory a few weeks ago in the latest teaser video, which came out after that episode. So I don't know, maybe what's more likely? That they filmed the teasers months ago and they just happened to release them after my episode? Or that they decided to make a teaser with that Easter egg after they listened to and were inspired by my episode? I'm thinking the latter. So anyway, make sure you check out, especially with Taemin's teaser, there are these silver, metal ball things that are like a mini universe of sorts. I'm not sure if it's, one of my weird, more out there theories is that there might be a Horde and Here's a Who kind of situation where there's you're looking down on a smaller world within a bigger world and all of that, but we won't go into that. But there is something there with that symbol, and I talk about it more in that other episode, but just keep that in mind, that those metal balls are in NCT videos. They also are suspended in the air in the Jopping video, so the fact that that is back in the scene is just one of many little Easter egg moments I spotted, so you can never be too careful when analyzing SM Entertainment promo videos. More exciting news, Hylim from Wonder Girls is writing her first essay book, which will be out soon. Unfortunately, only in Korean for now, but hopefully maybe English versions will be out someday in the future. Gummy just had her first child, so congratulations to her and her husband. And Seokjin's older brother just got married, and Namjoon and Hobi did attend the ceremony, and Seokjin officiated the wedding, so very exciting week for life milestones. Alright, more BTS updates. So, if you haven't seen Tiny Tan yet, you really must. Tiny Tan is here. They are the new BTS little cartoon characters, and their latest video is just the joy you need in your day. Even if you're not a BTS fan, you really should check it out, Tiny Tan. It's like a 2 to 3 minute video that will put a smile on your face for the rest of the day. It's mic drop, but make it baby, and it is the cutest thing, and I'm just so in love with it. So that really made my day. They never stop giving us new content to look forward to. More big BTS news, Map of the Soul 7. The album is now certified gold in Hungary and Belgium. It also just went triple platinum in Japan. Their new single, Dynamite, that is coming out later this month, is going to be their first to officially make its break on the radio everywhere in the world at once, as opposed to hitting different radio sectors in the world at different points. It's just going to have this world premiere on the radio for the first time, which is really big, and part of just helping hopefully normalize K-pop on the charts, on just the Western music charts really too. So a big part of that as well is the fact that BTS are nominated for those VMAs this year, 3 of them, so a couple actually outside of the K-pop specific category for the first time, which is huge. And side note about the VMAs, due to the ongoing coronavirus social distancing concerns and all of that, the VMAs will no longer take place where they were set to take place in New York. So they'll now take place at outdoor venues around the city. I don't know what that means for artists that are scheduled to perform, but I'm really crossing my fingers that no one's going to make BTS fly here, because being on an airplane is a whole other matter, and the USA we're really still having a huge issue with the virus, so I really don't want them to come to this hot spot right now. So, yeah, I really hope they can just perform from Seoul and have that be part of the VMAs. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen, and I hope that also happens for their iHeart Radio Festival virtual online event as well. Other BTS news that is now changing because of the virus. So they are releasing yet another special concert movie of sorts for theaters called To Break the Silence, and this is going to have tickets on sale August 13th, with screening starting September 10th in the USA and other countries. And so that makes me kind of sad and wistful, because other countries did their homework and did what they had to do to get the virus under control, so they can probably go back to the movies and feel somewhat safe. Unfortunately, in the USA, we still have a lot of issues with that, so it leaves me hesitant. But if I do risk going to the movies for anyone, it will be for BTS, but I'm still honestly contemplating if I'm gonna go. And I know that sounds like a huge issue for ARMY, like how can you not go as an ARMY or want to go, but the situation here is just really something else. But I won't go into it further today, but it does leave me pause and make me just wistful for when we can see the Map of the Soul tour someday and all of that. Speaking of tours, ATEEZ's world tour is apparently not canceled. So the latest statement is kind of a non-statement, but an update is an update, and I appreciate it nevertheless. ATEEZ's world tour, according to My Music Taste, is still happening. The statement they issued the other day just said so. It just said, it's happening due to COVID-19. We still don't know exactly when, but hang in there. They've still got a show prepared for you. So that is still good news to know. Time for a rapid fire round now of big milestones in terms of view counts and sales for different K-pop artists. So Taemin's single 2 Kids hit number 1 on the iTunes charts in at least 19 countries as of recording time. And also the new rookie group from YG Entertainment, Treasure, hit number 1 in at least 19 countries. G-Idol's summer single Dumpty Dumpty topped the charts in at least 41 regions around the world. ATEEZ's Zero Part 1. So for context here, ATEEZ's Action to Answer, their latest album, sold over 62,000 copies. 62,000, but this new one, Zero Fever Part 1, sold 233,000 and 399, but so from over 62,000 to over 233,000, they are just so incredible at this world domination thing they're doing. King Daniel has surpassed 1 million cumulative album sales since his solo debut a while back. Day 6's Zombie video has 10 million views. Twice's Cheer Up video is 400 million views. Twice's Fanfare Japanese single just went platinum in Japan. Super Junior's No Other video has 100 million views. Blackpink's How You Like That has 400 million views. Blackpink's Kill This Love has 950 million views and will probably reach 1 billion by the end of the year, mark my words. And EXO-SC's 1 billion views album has now sold over 500,000 copies. It needs to sell 1 billion copies. We cannot make a song called 1 billion views not reach 1 billion copies. That is just too perfect. The universe demands it. So, other quick updates. In the world of music more broadly, Quarantunes is the segment. So let's talk about TikTok. So, as we've talked about in the past few episodes on Quarantunes, TikTok's future is very uncertain because of some privacy concerns, but in my opinion, it's pretty overblown. This is what happened with Zapeta, where there was all these privacy concerns raised, but oddly, because just in the context by comparison's sake of other apps we use all the time, like Facebook. They have way more of our data they could use against us or just use in ways that we don't appreciate or that are not honest. So these apps like Zepeto and TikTok really don't have or use much of our data just in comparison to other apps, but they become the focus whenever this new game or less necessary, I guess, in your daily life, more frivolous sounding app like Zepeto or TikTok that seems more like for fun than anything else. Those apps seem to get the most scrutiny, even though they're not necessarily the most dangerous from a security perspective. But anyway, TikTok is the target of this issue. It was recently banned in India, where it was absolutely huge. It's been banned in some other countries and now is technically banned in the USA, but the legal aspect of this is a little weird because basically it was banned by issuing an executive order, which is basically a way to step around Congress and make something happen. Usually it's for dire circumstances, so TikTok I wouldn't consider a dire circumstance, but that's just me. But Microsoft, before this executive order was issued, had already been planning to buy TikTok so that it could be owned by a U.S. company. And so now, apparently, this executive order TikTok ban will not be applicable until September 15th, unless Microsoft actually buys it before then. And if they do, then I guess it's not banned at all, and the executive order is kind of null and void. So it's not actually clear. There's a lot of legal debate around what an executive order actually has the power to do and what it doesn't, how much power it should have, how much weight it should carry. So that is a little tricky. It's more complicated than just saying it was banned or was not banned yet. But the future of it is up in the air. That's what we really know. We also know that TikTok plans to sue over this executive order. They plan to sue the U.S. government over it because they basically are calling it an unfair business practice. That's basically trying to censor them for unfounded security reasons or alleged security concerns. So the greater world context of all this drama is that the past few years there's been some tension that's heightened between the US and China over tariffs and a trade war and whatnot. And so this basically all also kind of, those tensions heightened even more this year with the virus, and there was this alleged but never confirmed theft of vaccine information in the U.S. from Chinese hackers, and so that led to the U.S. closing their consulate in Houston. So we had Chinese diplomats in Houston that were basically kicked out, is basically what happened. And for a little more context here, what happened was, what typically happens in these situations, long story short, is that there are talks, there may be a bill issued or something legislative happens, but to actually close a consulate is like so next level. Usually that's like not step one. That's not your go-to. That is long after tensions have reached an immense peak. So to take that drastic action shows that there was clearly either a high degree of credibility in the allegations of stealing vaccine information, or that there's just this immense heightened tension that is probably has a lot of variables that the public doesn't even know about yet. So anyway, all to say that TikTok is really not the place to invest right now. Just economically, it's not the best place to try to promote yourself. And as a marketing strategy, it may fade away as fast as it rose in popularity for artists, because marketing to the USA is a big important thing for a lot of international artists to be recognized around the world, whether you like it or not. That's how the industry works. So if TikTok is being here, that's really going to hurt them and their ability to spread their music through TikTok dance challenges and things like that. So this could have huge ramifications just socially and culturally, and possibly just out of overblown security concerns. So very frustrating, but we will see what happens with it. It may get tied up in courts, and if TikTok does officially file a lawsuit, maybe the ban will not even go into effect until much later than mid-September. Maybe Microsoft will buy it before then, which I'm actually pretty confident will happen, so don't get too worried yet, but just, if you're a manager of an artist, maybe you don't want to focus so much of your marketing plan around TikTok just yet. There are other ways artists can promote their music these days that have more staying power, like Selena Gomez decided to basically have an interview promoting her music and give a little performance on Animal Crossing through a Twitch stream called Animal Talking. She also gave a little interview as her Animal Crossing character, which is so adorable, and I hope more stars promote their music through ways like that. Also, people can rely on their fans just to help with promo as usual. Very much so the K-pop fans do that because we're just so beyond passionate. But other fandoms aside from K-pop are showing their passion as well. The latest example is with Miley Cyrus fans who basically created this live audio playlist of Miley music and streamed together, and they had their own virtual concert event, which is very cool to see. We need to be doing these safe versions of concerts or other ways to promote and listen to and share music right now because of obviously the safety concerns with the virus still. So that is why my call out of the day, I guess you could say, goes to the people who held a secret rave, quote unquote secret rave in Brooklyn just last week. It was under a bridge. It was hosted by the same group who had a similar event for the 4th of July this year. They had a table at the event with free masks and sanitizer, but a lot of people did not wear masks. The organizers claim 70 to 80% of guests wore them, which I'm pretty sure is a very rough ballpark, untrue estimate, but that is what they claim. And so the mask optional thing I've already ranted about, so that's yeah, you know how I feel about that. But also, this is just, it was very unsafe. Who knows if it caused a super spreader event with asymptomatic cases, but this rave did get broken up by cops around 4 a.m. the next morning. This was Saturday, August 1st, Sunday, August 2nd, that weekend, and that's basically what happened, but we need to find ways to be the anti-example of that, and a good incentive to just keep to online gatherings is the new partnership between JYP and SM Entertainment. So they're of course still separate companies, but they're doing this joint venture called BLC, Beyond Live Corporation, where they are now the first officially recognized company to basically focus and specialize in online concert experiences. And if the positive reviews of their past work with Twice I'm sure it will be great reviews, but I mean with the shows that have already taken place, Super M and all of that, if those shows are any indication, the positive reception and excitement around these shows is just indicating it's going to be huge. I really do think Beyond Live Corporation is really going to help expand the reach of these companies. It's just a great thing for the publicity of these companies separately and together, and for K-pop promoting globally. I just really do want to encourage more of those online events to happen so that people are more incentivized to stop having these dangerous raves and stuff. We need to hold off on those, please. So people really do sound like they are optimistic, though, about the future of concerts. Apparently, if you recall in a previous episode, we talked about a conference call in the spring where the CEO of Live Nation said that about 90% of ticket holders decided to hold on to their tickets and were not asking for refunds. Now that has dropped to 86%, but that's still very high amount of people who just decided, why bother getting a refund, I'll just hold on to my ticket. So that will probably help the industry heal a little bit from this incredible financial blow they're dealing with, because back in the spring on that call, he had said that the revenue dropped about 25%, but now that the summer tour season has officially been canceled and not happened this year, the revenue drop went from 25% to 98%. So Live Nation will need help. Maybe they should invest in or get some support from Beyond Live Corporation, do something with K-pop. I don't know, just an idea for them. So that is the latest in the world of this weird socially distanced concert industry environment and all of that. After this break, we are going to get to my oral history of KCON. First off, a quick overview of the timeline of KCON. So this started as a one-day event in LA in 2012. It attracted over 20,000 attendees, so basically filling up an arena twice is the size of the amount of people who showed up, so not bad for a first year at all, but by no means at all near what the number would become very shortly. So this was started basically by Mnet America, this subsidiary of CJ, and so this company has the subsidiary Mnet, who decided to host this flagship event. It was basically advertised as all about how you be on way more than just the K-pop, but all Korean culture, the fashion, the food, all of it. And so that's basically what the convention part is, and then then comes the end of the event concert that night. So that is what happened for a day-long event in LA in 2012. A few years later, it then entered New York as well. 2015, it entered Japan, and it also moved venues. So in 2015, KCON had moved to a much bigger LA venue and had moved into a 3-day event with 58,000 attendees. So it over doubled its amount of attendees in just 3 years. 2016, KCON entered Paris and a few other markets. And also that was the year that the Wall Street Journal, though, still said that it seemed like KCON would end up just breaking even financially, because this is a huge, expensive event to pull off, and they thought they were attracting a lot of people, but maybe wouldn't really have much of a savings, or not an amount raised and saved for later out of this whole thing. But they would probably have to eat their words in the coming years. So March 2017, KCON started in Mexico, and it has continued to grow over the years by the numbers. So here's where my original reporting of sorts comes in. I tried to do some of the math about KCON's growth over the years, and so I looked at the data for 2012 to 2019 timeframe, and so here are the differences basically from when they started to now. If you look at 2012 to 2019, the amount of programs offered at LA's KCON every year has risen by 218. The New York program offerings have increased by 85 programs. The LA amount of panel guests has increased by 190. The New York panel guests have increased by 65. LA has added an average of 10 more artists, and New York an average of 8 more artists. So even though New York started later and has always been just numerically a smaller event with less of a turnout and everything, and less acts hired and everything, they've had huge growth as well over the years. So I looked at these percents in all different ways, but that is basically the ultimate simplified version of what I was looking at, is that the program growth has just been so immense in less than a decade. The other coverage I looked at that was qualitative was I looked at a bunch of different articles that were written about KCON over the years. And so I will acknowledge a few things to keep in mind, a few limitations on my study now, because the inner sociologist in me has to talk about what I learned in sociology. And so the disclosure I need to make is that this is obviously a very minimal study. I looked at 25 to 30 different articles that were written covering and reviewing KCON content from a bunch of different sites. I did get rid of the authors' names, so when I was reading this content, I would print it out and cross out the author's name so that I did not have my own bias towards certain journalists coming into play at all. And I kept track of and kept score of the times, the numerical times different words and terms came up. I did a bunch of content coding here, so obviously it's a small sample size of articles, but big enough, I think, to basically get at what I'm trying to get at, which is the whole vibe of KCON and how the Western media covers it. So that is one limitation, is this small sample size of the articles I looked at. Other sample size to think about and keep in mind is that I just looked at the written content, so there's, I'm sure, a lot of video interviews that took place and YouTube content people have posted from the show. I didn't look at those reviews. I also didn't look at reviews from just in general people, like who aren't hired to write about it, so I didn't look at, like Ticketmaster reviews or anything of that nature. And so this is because I wanted to really capture how the media reports and perceives this event, not how the fans do, and how the media perceives the fans, really. And so that interpretation requires looking at people other than the fans to see how they look to outsiders. So I just always need to start off any sociological research by pointing out a limitation, which is the sample size of content. The type of content was limited as well, and so keep all that in mind. And also keep in mind that there's probably a lot more coverage out there that I didn't get to just because I looked at the first handful of Google pages. I just wanted to search what anyone would see, what the average American who's just trying to understand what KCON is would find in their search engine, and I pulled up the first 25 to 30 articles and looked through those. So that is what I did, and so here are my findings from it, but just keep in mind that limitation. I just feel compelled to be honest about that, but I think it is still valuable information, not entirely comprehensive, but still comprehensive enough to see some overall patterns emerge in the reporting. So, the coverage of the events unfolded as follows. So I looked at some differences between how the male and female KCON acts were discussed, and actually the only acts who were critiqued for their stage presence being lacking were the female artists, which I found interesting, but it did not actually happen very often, so only 2 or 3 times, so that's good. On the whole, the reviews of male and female artists were pretty positive. It's not like the male acts were praised a lot more than the female acts, which was good. The words like cute and adorable and bubbly and those words that are very cutesy and the aegyo of it all, those words were attributed to females much more often than males. No surprise there. And males exactly twice as often, were more likely to be called edgy or a rocker or rugged or edgy. I already said edgy, but you know what I mean. The term sexy or sexiness was commented on 3 times as often for the males. And the outfits, just complimenting the outfits and focusing on the artist's outfits, though, that actually was a very, very small difference between the amount of times females compared to males had their outfits discussed. So it wasn't a super sexist thing where just the females, they were focused on the outfit. They focused mostly on the performance aspect for all of the acts. Interestingly, the male acts were complimented on their choreography and synchronization a lot more often, and females were complimented on their vocals more often. That was a little surprising and just interesting to find out. Some really interesting descriptions I found throughout the quotes I pulled from these articles. So B1A4 was described as, quote, the most squeaky clean version of pop to ever exist. They commented a lot about their schoolboy look with the school uniform outfits and that whole concept they did, and they were basically described as overly cutesy and adorable and schoolboy-esque, which I found very interesting. Also, one person said that they put the boy back in boy band, so I guess meaning boyish charm as opposed to like grown up, like manly image. So that was an interesting characterization. Another person described ATEEZ as embodying the chaotic energy of Very Good, which was Block B's hit from 2013. So that was an interesting comparison to Block B energy. I feel like that's a compliment for ATEEZ. TOO was praised, and someone said, quote, if the purpose of the KCON concert is to advertise new groups to new audiences, it was the best advertising I've ever seen. So that seems to be a recurring theme as well. This is a great time for rookies to really show their stuff. So, Girls' Generation fans, this description, there's a lot to unpack in. Quote, the crowd nearly stampeded at the arrival of Girls' Generation, whose international fame, everywhere that is except for the US, is comparable to that of Britney Spears in her prime. So there's a lot there. There's a lot there that we are going to talk about. So, first of all, the crowd nearly stampeded. That was a very common descriptor used, which we'll get into later. Girls' Generation international fame, and then in parentheses, everywhere except for the U.S. mainstream. I found that addition to the sentence interesting. Not sure it was necessary. and not sure if it's even accurate. I think Girls' Generation could be considered to have made it in the US, but I guess maybe not. I don't know. But it was interesting nonetheless, and the comparison to Britney Spears in her prime was also interesting, because Britney is timeless. She doesn't have a prime, but also I kind of get what they're going. I can get a Britney vibe from some of Girls' Generation's comebacks, like the Catch Me If You Can looks and those kind of eras. But I don't know, that left me in thought, that comparison. I also looked at the amount of Western comparisons, the comparisons to Western artists that were made, which happened a lot. More often than not, when describing an artist's performance, they were compared to either another K-pop group or a Western group, which I get it for the sake of reviewing a show for a non-K-pop fan to better understand the context surrounding the review and how you're basically trying to get a feel for what their vibe is. I totally get the need to compare them to a Western act for the Western audience to get what they're all about and then maybe give them a try. But at the same time, it was kind of frustrating how often this came up. And yeah, I have a lot of issues with that. But it was very interesting to see who they were compared to. So Henry was compared to Justin Bieber, CN Blue was compared to the Beastie Boys and the Beatles. Beatles comparisons were probably the most common. BTS was actually, in their young Ricky Rap days, were compared to like an Eminem vibe, is how it was described. That was interesting. 2AM was compared to Boys to Men, which I can see a little bit, but full disclosure, I think Boys to Men is better. Spica was compared to Rihanna. I could kind of see that a little bit. Girls' Generation was compared to Britney and the Spice Girls a lot. EXO was actually compared to Skrillex when they performed Wolf one year. So that was interesting. I hadn't really thought of them as like Skrillex, but I guess I can see that with some of the remixes. It was also interesting that there was a set one year between Luhan and Chen, who they sang a What Is Love duet one year on stage, and it was compared to this song by Jeremiah, whose title I can't say on this podcast, but you know the Jeremiah song, which I found like a very interesting comparison to What Is Love, but do with that info what you will. I also found it interesting that repeatedly K-pop stars were commented and complimented on their English speaking as if it was a huge accomplishment that deserved to be to have attention drawn to it and praised, which was a little disappointing and patronizing if you ask me. But like New East, for example, they one person said the group prepared a speech in English to delighted fans, which I guess is just reporting what happened, but still, the fact that they constantly characterized it as very big and exciting when they finally spoke English was a little demeaning to me. For BAP's performance, someone said they elicited a huge roar of approval when they spoke in English, and IU's performance one year was commented on how the key quote IU gave during her set that kept being re-quoted for these pieces was about her talking about how she was nervous speaking English there and that English is difficult for her. It's just interesting that they highlight that. It seems unnecessary, but there you go. I also really wanted to look at how they characterize the fans themselves, because, you know, we've talked at length about my frustrations with assuming they're all a bunch of teenage girls or whatever. So the absolutely by far most common way fans were described is by screaming. Screaming, screaming, screaming. So this is just a handful of 19 of the many statements made throughout these pieces about how they viewed the fans. Everyone seemed to lose their minds. Pandemonium erupted. The tears began as soon as they waved hello. They sent the stadium into a tizzy. The whole venue erupted, caused the crowd to go berserk. The mere mention of his name set fans screaming. That includes screamy, tear-eyed fans, pushing at the gates, swarming the gates. Some cried, ecstatic fans that became hysterical, ear-splitting response, thousands of screaming fans, invasion, Beatlemania, hordes of open-walleted fans, obsessed, obsession, and this one especially really got to me. So this reaction to Teen Top, quote, they wanted to express how happy they were through dancing, which was really just a few heel clicks, but still cute enough to elicit a banshee scream. Wow. So, yeah, fans are definitely depicted as obsessed and loud and full of screams. So, I wanted to see, though, okay, maybe there are other variables that they got right when characterizing K-pop fandom. So, I looked at who they talked to, who they drew quotes from, and tried to see how that lines up with the demographic info we know about KCON attendees. So, it turns out these pieces spoke to many more women than men, more than so the amount they spoke to, so the amount of women was over twice the amount of men that they spoke to. They did talk to people ages 18 to 47 throughout that range, but the majority were in their teens and 20s, with only a very small amount in their 40s or 30s, no one older than 47. So I looked at real KCON stats, and it is true that actually more females than males attend KCON and continue to attend KCON, and that less than 50% of attendees are Asian. Actually, around 10% only are Korean themselves. And fans in the early KCON years were the majority teens, although now that is changing to encompass a much broader age range. So, somewhat it's accurate sample wise to interview more female than male fans just proportionally, but I do find it interesting that it was over twice the amount of women interviewed compared to male fans, and very few old fans. So, they were definitely depicted as this exception to a norm. Some key quotes they decided to include. Actually, this coverage I was much more satisfied with than I thought I would be. Is the variety of fan quotes they did include. I was worried they would just include this coverage overall would be all about this one narrative about an obsessed fan or something, but they really did get into some of the deeper meanings behind why people belong to a K-pop fandom. They quoted some people about how they like getting back in touch with their youth and like feeling young again, really, with their love of K-pop. They talked to older fans about that. They talked about just the encouraging fandoms and that feeling that's so welcoming and unique in K-pop fandoms that you can help each other, learn the dance moves and sing together. And it doesn't matter what language you speak or where you're from or anything. You're just singing this universal language called music together. People talked about representation and just seeing themselves as Asians represented. Others talked about really just being exposed to a new culture, being fun and exciting to them. And a lot talked about the ways that this manifested in their life in a million different ways and just provided a source of connection and escapism for them and all sorts of reasons. The number one most frequently cited reason by far, that most frequently given explanation by far of how these people got into K-pop is through K-dramas. So that I found very interesting. A lot of them reference Drama Fever, which is essentially the Netflix of K-pop content, K-drama content. Drama Fever actually, at the time of the piece about it, was basically getting an average. This was of course before pandemic binge watching, but before quarantine, Drama Fever was getting over 53 hours a month worth of streams. So viewers were on average tuning into Drama Fever around 53 hours a month. Netflix was around 10 to 11 hours a month. So huge increase in the number of, a huge difference in the number of hours fans spend glued to Drama Fever as opposed to Netflix. And actually K-drama's viewers are 85% non-Asian, and the majority are females age 18 to 24. So all kind of does go with that stereotypical image of a young woman being the K-pop demographic. So I found that interesting. So some of that is kind of true, just proportionally. You're going to talk to and interview more female young fans because of that. But a lot of them did talk about young and old, male and female, and everything else. They all talked about how they got into K-pop being part of K-dramas. All of them had that at least. So it was probably the most common explanation for the young woman, but everyone did, at least one person from all these different demographic groups did cite K-dramas as being their outlet into discovering the world of K-pop, which I find very interesting because that's what KCON is all about. It's this Hallyu extension. It's about so much more than the music. It's about K-culture and how your interest in one area might trigger your interest in another. And they very explicitly advertise that throughout the event too. They advertise, here's the K-beauty product that you saw in your favorite K-drama, or here's the K-fashion look you saw in your favorite K-pop video, or here's the K-pop food that your favorite K-pop idol always talks about. So all the connections between different aspects of K-culture are super on display at KCON, and fans love all of it, which goes to show why K-pop fans are so extra level, next level, unmatched have this unmatched level of passion and devotion for K-pop, because it impacts every aspect of our lives. It's not just music, it's everything we do and how we act, and so it affects all sorts of habits in our daily lives and our monthly streaming habits, apparently. So that's how part of the reason that we have that passion for it, because it really is fed into constantly by content coming from all different directions. The second most often cited reason or explanation given for how someone entered K-pop fandom status is through YouTube and social media. No surprise there. We've talked about that a lot on the show before. The third most common reason was just tagging along to an event that a friend had a ticket for, or getting into it thanks to a friend or a family member, so just by relationships and who you know, word of mouth. And the fourth most common was collabs. So, like one guy talked about how the League of Legends collab with G-Idol is how he was introduced to K-pop. So different outlets like that do those collabs with video games or with other maybe unexpected people, just those groupings and combinations, or just collaborating like NCT with Ava Max or Red Velvet with Ellie Goulding, very unexpected but positive crossovers. Or there was the whole Let's Shut Up and Dance collab. So those sort of global collaborations really do have an impact and convert some fans into K-pop fans, which I found interesting and something that managers probably really want to hear, so feel free to pass that info along to them. League of Legends collab was a big success, and so that's really exciting, especially because G-Idol's focused on English promo right now. Other overall conclusions I noticed is that 5 of the main pieces discuss the demographic diversity of fans there at length, so honestly more than I thought would discuss it, but also only 5 of the article, so not the majority, but a lot of them did address the diversity of fans, because K-pop really is it's for all fans, it's for all genders, it's for all ages, races, religions, everything. And so it's really cool to see that at these shows. I will just say to keep in mind, though, when I do say, though, that who attends these events is more often female than male, that ratio has been less imbalanced over the years, and it's also important to keep in mind that who goes to these conventions is not necessarily representative of who the fans are, really, because the people who go to the conventions are the ones who are most comfortable publicly expressing their love for something, and they're the ones that have the money to express their love for something and go to the convention and all of that. So keep that in mind too, that there's a class variable here to keep in mind that isn't represented, and there's also the variable of just, in general, men being maybe embarrassed to really love K-pop because of all of these internalized harmful conceptions of what should be masculine and feminine and ideal behavior and interests and all of that we talked about before. So men may be more resistant to embracing a love for pop music and other content that is associated with femininity, unfairly associated, but there you go. So anyway, so keep that in mind, that just because less men show up for KCON does not mean that less men actually like K-pop. It's just that it could be less that just feel super open about going to the event and comfortable going. So keep that in mind as well. Another key takeaway I got was that a lot of them started their story with the lead of like K-pop is here to stay, and this kind of shocked message, like this sense that, believe it or not, yeah, it's not just Gangnam Style, this thing is here to stay, the passion is there. So depicting fans as very passionate and devoted, which I like, but also it's weird that they view it as so abnormal and treat it as such a weird, bizarre new trend that we're into music, even if we don't speak Korean, because music is a universal language, it's all about how you feel, and I hope this is a great example of that. So it's just weird othering, though, in terms of the language used. There was a lot of talk also about how commercialized this thing is, which of course it's really all about spreading the culture as well. Even the heads of these events actually, so like Shin Hyun Kwan, the president of contents for Mnet, he was actually quoted saying that K-pop expanding is not really about making money. For him, he's totally fine with it not being about the money. That it is really about spreading Korean culture for a longer term impact. So he cares less about if you, like that Wall Street Journal piece about like, well, it'll probably just break even. This event actually, even if it didn't surpass expectations and it just did break even financially, it would have a long-term financial benefit for Korea and interest in the culture and tourism and things like that. So that's how he looked at it, as very long-term goals. And so the quickness of the expanded interest in Korean content probably is just a special bonus and a surprise. So that I found interesting to hear about. I also found interesting that a lot of fans seem to voice more excitement for the concert than the convention. So the convention was almost like a warm-up to the main event, which is the show. And that also, the only one article out of all of these took the time to focus on the charitable aspects of KCON. Because KCON has always partnered with charitable organizations. Even just this digital version of KCON we had a few weeks ago, or I guess it was June actually, but time has no meaning anymore this summer, so whenever it was. The online KCON we had, they had some proceeds from viewing was kind of a fundraiser of sorts, because then views translated into proceeds for the Learning Never Stops campaign. So things like that, KCON has always been affiliated with, but that doesn't really get talked about. And only one article in my sample did. Talking about how in New Jersey there were, for KCON New York, as it's called, but really Jersey area, talking about how different educational programs were being promoted there and financially benefited, and that Make-A-Wish was their partner then and continues to be, and Make-A-Wish kids can constantly get their KCON dreams to come true. So they do a lot of that stuff that just doesn't get tons of attention. Another thing that I found interesting is that the chief of CJ Entertainment's American wing, Ted Kim, he was interviewed and he said, quote, "We knew the fandom was out there. We'd seen these fan gatherings spontaneously manifest at other events we'd sponsors, but we were struggling because it's very hard to get good data when it comes to phenomena like this. You're just not able to quantify things, and at some point, you just need to make a leap of faith." Talking about how actually KCON, they really were just testing it out, and it was considered a risk at first. They started out and they were testing the waters, and it was a big test to take, a big leap to make, because it was hard to quantify the passion of the fans and the true amount of them that would turn out in public for a big event like this, and how much they would for K-culture, not just the music. If it was also based on other aspects of K-culture, would they still be interested in going? And turns out, of course, and there's a huge wave of support, but it was a leap of faith. They did not have huge goals and expectations for this event at first, which I just found very interesting. There are some key events I want to talk about that were the most talked about, most frequently referenced highlights / lowlights / just overall controversial or just talked about moments of these shows over the years. There were a lot that we won't get into, just iconic performances that need no explanation, but some I found interesting were the IU's shows were talked about a lot. IU talking about IU performing just because she has this great charisma and stage presence and always has, and she had that special surprise cameo with Neil from Teen Top that was referenced quite a bit. People commented on the next level events at the convention that really showed Korea's technology, like the 4D movie theater type event where you could watch like a G-Dragon concert clip in a 4D simulation type environment, and other cool tech gadgets to explore with. People talked about the songwriting camp contest, basically, where The prize was getting to talk to and have a meeting with a K-pop producer, which is huge for those artists. There were also really important, serious, in-depth discussion panels about masculinity and femininity in K-pop, about LGBTQIA plus representation. I know Holland actually got to speak on that panel a year or two ago. So really great exposure for all sorts of different topics and serious discussions, but also just more fun stuff. People reference the fan club meetings, how each fandom got their own club meeting time and place to just connect with specifically fans of their own fandom. Carrots even got to record a special video message for Seungkwan, who wasn't there due to an injury that year. So people talked about the community spirit, the fun fan engagements, and just the next level tech and other introductions that really amazed them about the world of K-culture. But by far, the most talked about of all of these events was G-Dragon and Missy Elliott together, which really was, wow, what a moment. It was very interesting how that was talked about, where people really seemed to characterize Missy Elliott as paving the way for K-pop. Basically allowing them to fill her shoes and her basically having, paved the way. Like one quote is, her presence also reminded fans that today's K-pop is continuing the work she started. Her electronic sounds, her very just unique, all her own confident fashion sense, her So Addictive album, all of that seemed to be attributed a lot to her influence on K-pop, whether they realized it or not. And so it was interesting how much they talked about her impact. And with G-Dragon, they also had high praise for G-Dragon on his own and said, I guess if anyone has crossover success capability, it's him. But even without the Missy Elliott collab, he didn't even need that for this global takeover that he did have. But it's still very interesting, especially when you think about how when G-Dragon went on a solo world tour before his military leave, he performed at a venue that was like 10,000. So keep in mind that the first KCON was basically like 2 arenas full of people, so 2 arena shows, and G-Dragon basically on a solo tour got to fill out that's basically talked to that audience like dozens of times in the USA, or probably not that many shows, but you know what I mean. Like, he could turn out a crowd almost as big as 2012's KCON just on his own. He, even outside of Big Bang, G-Dragon has been everything, and he got a huge boost from Missy Elliott, and it was interesting how they seem to be attributed to each other's just musical improvement. They're just a great duo, just so iconic, that performance, and that, very, very, very much praised about performance, and I can't disagree. They do it, it's a very unique aesthetic that they both have, and then when they combine it, though, it's just a perfect blend, and so I found that very interesting, as well as how often the other comparisons to black artists were, with 2AM being compared to Boyz II Men, and all of that. It was, and then the Jeremiah comparisons, the comparisons to a lot of black R&B artists and bands, and it was just very interesting because truly there is so much black culture that has influenced K-pop over the years that I wish they more frequently opened up about and attributed to the industry and its 90s R&B vibes that they were heavily influenced by in the early days of artists. You also have artists like Jennie from Blackpink always talks about how Lauryn Hill is who she looked up to when studying the art of rap, really. They have a lot, other artists have also attributed, basically cited a lot of black artists as their role models or someone they've musically been inspired by, so very interesting to think about and hopefully gets recognized more, but glad that Missy Elliott performance collab with G-Dragon really got its due praise. Last thing is that there were some opening acts who were a bit more questionable in nature, namely Chad Future. So, if you don't know who Chad Future is, the quickest summary I can give you is that he got to perform on a main stage at KCON in 2013. He is a white boy from Detroit. He's not Asian, he's not Korean at all, and he basically branded himself as the first K-pop artist meaning American K-pop. And we've talked a lot about these types of artists before, like Z-Girls and Catchy and all of them, on a previous episode of the show, TikTok Getting Closer, if you want to check that out. But we need to continue this discussion now because definitely the most criticized artist at KCON, or at least one of the most criticized artists in KCON's history, is Chad Future for some very reasonable reasons. So the quickest, I don't want to spend too much time promoting him, but we do need to address this. So basically, he started promoting a K-pop because he viewed it as a need in 2013 and the early 2010s to find a way to bridge the divide between K-pop and Western pop, and he viewed it as kind of his mission to find a way to do that because he viewed that as impossible to do. And so, before I give my opinion, here are just the facts about his career. So, and then I will go off. So, he never went to Korea. He grew up here. He actually did spend 2 months in Seoul, but that was when he started working on his EP. So prior to this music career, he had not had any experience in Korea. He didn't speak Korean. His songs include a lot of English mixed with some Korean. But if I had to guess the percent, I would say it's gotta be well over 60 to 70% English lyrics. And so, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts I want to jump in with, but first, let me just finish the rundown. So, he basically decided to crowdfund his own project. Over the years, spent $100K on average on different music videos, which is actually a pretty small budget for a video. And they still look quite impressive for $100K, to be honest. But I said I would leave my opinion out of it for a second, so sorry. But he's actually been able to collaborate with some really big names. He's worked with Ravi from VIX, Aaron from New East. He's worked with Uji from Bestie and Sunwoon of Hotshot. He's worked with a lot of K-pop producers, but he also works with a lot of non-Korean, non-Asian people as well. He's worked with Drew Ryan Scott, and he really has a lot of connections. He's worked with MTV for years, and his relationship with MTV and the AMAs and all of that have helped him network, and that led him to forming all these collabs with people and getting them to jump into music videos for cameos and all of that. And so he has friends in high places, and so he got all this access into the world of K-pop to enter it. And so he's said again and again and again in interviews, his goal is to, like I said, he views it as bridging this gap between American and Korean pop. So, like when he was talking in an interview about his collaboration with Ravi, for example, he said, quote, "The message of the song is international music. Ravi's verse is all in Korean and my verse is in English, and I have 2 lines in Korean that I rap as well. It was co-written by Drew Ryan Scott. It's really interesting to me because he's not Korean either, so it's a good blend because we have some really amazing producers and writers who are American and Korean." So, there's a lot here. That basically sums up what he said. He also said something similar about the Aaron collab, saying, quote, "Aaron really exemplifies a K-pop too because he was born in LA but works in Korea." Basically, in every interview he talks about how the theme of the song is international music, and that he's happy to work with Korean artists because they add the Korean and he adds the American, and then it turns into a K-pop, American K-pop, and he just wants to make that a thing, and kind of talks about it as if it is a genre he's creating on his own. He actually started in this boy band of sorts called Heart to Heart, which tried to be an K-pop boy band, basically. They had 1 single, and it flopped, and then that is pretty much a fact, not a bias. It unarguably kind of flopped. But everyone thought it was kind of a parody band, like BGA, but this was actually not a BGA. This was a group very serious about it. But the song was not taken seriously. It was called Facebook Official, so right off the bat, people were probably not sure how intentionally it was corny. And so it's a very low budget video, and it was their one main single before it quickly disbanded. But anyway, so It was an all-English song. If he didn't call it a K-pop, you wouldn't call it K-pop at all. You wouldn't realize that he interpreted it as K-pop content. His other songs are really like that as well. A lot of them, you would probably just assume it's just another pop song, not for the K-pop label that he adds, and a few verses here and there that are in Korean. So he has a handful of singles that he's gained over the years, and a lot of them are collabs. His ultimate goal was really to crowdfund 3 main projects, and then after those EPs or some other mixtape type thing, he hoped that by that point he would have a full record deal. So that didn't work out. So where things stand now is that he really hasn't released things in quite a while, and so people assumed he kind of faded into oblivion, just career-wise, and that things just didn't work out because he tried to self-fund, and obviously self-funding is always hard in the music industry, but now with COVID and no ability to perform live shows, it's even harder. So you'd probably think he's just done, but he actually posted on Instagram earlier this year claiming that Chad Future is going to return in 2020. That is as specific as he got, so people think he has comeback plans in the works, and there's a largely negative reception to that. So that's basically who he is and what he's doing, and we need to talk. So, as if you checked out that episode called TikTok Getting Closer, you know that I have a lot of issues in general with this concept of especially white people, like EXP Edition and all that, basically branding themselves as K-pop and taking up a space in the K-pop scene when so many spaces are already not afforded to Asian artists. So they're taking up more room even than white people normally get in culture. And so as K-pop goes mainstream, as they call it, for white people to jump in and like mainstream it even more just feels very, very problematic. And so I don't know how he got a stage at KCON. But I can see why there was a lot of backlash and why he wasn't invited back, and since 2013, as far as I know. And so the fact that he was able to perform there, though, is emblematic of why I have a problem with this, because he got so much easy access to the, and again, okay, let me rephrase this. So, my issue is not with him or anyone who is really into K-pop, who's really wants to express that, who wants to learn Korean and learn more about Seoul. Obviously, I don't have an issue with that. That's what KCON is all about, is learning and respecting the culture. But my issue is the fact that he labels his music as such, because he could work on K-pop music behind the scenes or something, but for him to try to be the face of something where people who normally don't get to be the face of something get to be the face of something, like, get it out of the way, please. I don't know of a better way to say it. It's a very problematic mentality to see someone to feel like they want to jump in and lead a narrative. It's especially troubling that this white person wants to jump in and claim credit for making K-pop in America a thing, and I don't want him to be the hero of this narrative. It's just not fair because he is, the reason why I think it's so irritating and frustrating to hear about his KCON set is because that access was not afforded to everyone the same way. So this is about big, long-term, deeply entrenched, implicit racial bias issues and marginalization of Asian entertainers and their culture and everything. So this is about way more than just him. This is not even really about him. It's just about the fact that, so it's not about his easy access. It's about how his access and his space that he's taking up in this scene is at the expense of people who otherwise wouldn't have that access. Hopefully that makes sense. He doesn't have, racist gatekeepers blocking him from opportunities, and so for him to... it just feels so unfair to think about how he easily could get access to performing and stuff when there are so many hurdles. Like, think about Eric Nam, for example. Eric Nam had to go to Korea. He grew up in the USA, had to go to Korea to really make it in the music scene and learn Korean and everything and sing in Korean to be well received as an Asian American artist. And then he came back to the USA and was popular. But to have to reverse engineer his way back home is something I really hope future artists don't have to do to be accepted here in the USA by proving like they're authentic or something. And I just think that it's like, to think about how much Eric had to reverse engineer his journey, his career, and his just image and everything, for him to have to do that and put up with all that is so much. And so to think that this guy Chad can just like skip all of those years of hard work and perseverance that Eric had to deal with to just, skip over all those obstacles and automatically reach this same success without those same barriers, having to go back somewhere before coming home. It's just not right. It just feels unfair, and I just wish they had given that stage, the literal stage, to someone else. It's just not his place in the media, please. And so he can go make K-pop music, but maybe don't label it as such. Like, he doesn't need to. A lot of it is not even really, like I said, about that. And I also take issue with his characterization of the theme of his work is international music, because his whole constant interview refrain is that he's bridging the gap. What gap? Has he looked around lately? You don't need to bridge the gap, and we especially don't need a white person to be the one to do it. It's just, I don't like the thought that he would, not that I want to see anyone's downfall. I'm not saying that, but I don't like to think that the narrative would come true that the person who would eventually, if he was as successful as he dreamed, I don't like the narrative that people might latch onto in the media about here's the person who helped bridge that divide, and if someone took and ran with that narrative and made him the star of it, I just have a lot of issues with that. And it's just erases so much history and struggle and that non-whites had to go through for entertainment credibility and everything. And so I could go on and on, but that's my main issue really, is that he wants to be the face of something I don't think he needs to be the face of, or should be. And it's very much because it is unnecessary, and it feels like, no wonder people thought that the Heart to Heart thing was a corny, like, parody thing, because he didn't really pull it, like, he clearly didn't show much extensive interest or knowledge in K-pop beforehand. And, like, for example, there is this one interview quote he gave about, quote, I wanted 12 dancers, I wanted cars, I wanted fire. The concept is powerful, breaking cars. It's a K-pop video. K-pop videos don't have a lot of storylines sometimes. It's just, oh, it's cool. So yeah, true, kind of. Sometimes K-pop videos are like fire and breaking cars, as he describes it, but it's so much more than that. And I know he said sometimes those videos have that, and he knows it's not all of them, but his whole thing, I saw his videos for the sake of being knowledgeable enough to talk about him for this podcast. So, and they're all very, they're all like that. I mean, there's the storyline is not really, it's surface level, and it's, it's about the aesthetics and the visual. Like, he's not telling the deep stories that some stars do and some stars don't have to, but, it feels like the investment he has in this world is, it just sounds like his focus is so much on proving that Americans can make it in K-pop, and I don't like that reverse narrative at all. It's just so unnecessary. It's this weird, I don't know how else to describe it, but it is a weird issue, and I'm just very frustrated with the fact that he seems to view it as a good mission in life to kind of take over this space that he doesn't need to take over. So we'll see if he comes back. I don't really hope so. I hope he can find a way to work in the K-pop world without making himself the front and center of it all. And yeah, so that's my thought on that. If you do want my thoughts on his actual content, so I did give my totally unfiltered thoughts on Catchy and the others in that other episode. So now let's talk about his stuff if you want to know. I will say that objectively, song-wise, his production is not bad. The music itself, the instrumentals and stuff, that kind of goes off sometimes, I'll admit. The lyrics need a lot of work, but the sounds are good. He's working with good people. And so there's that to think about. There are songs that sound very much like either parodies or just incredibly heavily influenced, like Unstoppable sounds very like 21. Hello sounds very much like G-Dragon, and the video aesthetic looks so much like Heartbreaker by G-Dragon. He has this English ballad. It looks like it was filmed in a low budget version of the A by Got7 video. It's like a ballad of sorts. Used to Be is a song that's very Radio Disney-esque, and that pretty much sums that up. Lonely at the Top is like the standard I Won't Let the Haters Get Me Down song that a lot of artists seem to feel compelled to release, even if no one asked. So his discography, it's in my objective music-based reviews of these non-K-pop K-pop people, his music is better than EXP Edition or Catchy, or not as good as the Z Stars, but it's better than some of them actually. But it's still very not my thing, and it's high quality in some ways, not in others. Like I said, the lyrics need a lot of work. So that's my music review if you were interested. So one more thing about him that I found interesting is how popular is he? And so I looked it up for comparison's sake, Spotify listeners, YouTube subscribers, whatnot, and as of recording time, here are the numbers. So on Spotify, he has 1,193 monthly listeners. So, for context, a very under-the-radar rookie K-pop group probably has, I don't know, I would say at least 2,000 followers. So, for him to get less than 2,000 is interesting, especially because it's been so many years. EXP Edition has less, or no, actually has more, 1,308. So, 1,300 versus 1,100 with Chad. So, they both have quite low amounts. BGA actually is over 13,000. That was the explicitly parody group, so that's interesting. And Catchy actually has over 25,000 monthly listeners, so they really are the most popular on Spotify of these non-K-pop K-pop groups. Chad's most viewed YouTube video is Rock the World. It's with 1 million views, so that's not nothing, but it's not huge either. Catchy has over 11 million views on one of their videos, and although it is more than EXP Edition, who has around 945,000 views on the video, so Chad Future's YouTube Topics has 70 subscribers, 70, but him not in the topic section, if you subscribe to his actual channel, that has 105,000 subscribers, which is way more than EXP with 52.7 thousand, and Catchy has 176,000. So, in quick sum, he has less YouTube subscribers than Catchy by a lot, but way more than EXP Edition by a lot. He has less monthly listeners than everyone, and his most viewed video has a little more than EXP Edition, but a lot less than Catchy's views. So basically, he's not as popular as Catchy at all, but he is slightly more popular than EXP Edition in some cases. So EXP Edition is known to not be super popular, so for him to typically be ranking a little lower than them kind of shows you how successful he's been at this. So I don't know what we'll see from him again. I'm kind of done talking about him, but that is what happened, and that was the most panned act that I noticed in the write-ups about KCON and who was getting to showcase their skills and talents for the world. So that basically sums up my research. What we have here is honestly, I was pretty pleasantly surprised in some aspects of the media coverage. I was way more cynical about certain things. I thought there'd be way more sexism and a greater disparity between the time spent talking about females' outfits versus males, or just things like that. But there was a lot more parody than I expected. The characterizations of certain groups were a lot more real and very well and detailed, as opposed to just super surface level. So, I mean, these reviews did have a lot of thought put into them, which I appreciate. The amount of Western artist comparisons did not surprise me at all. That was huge. The amount of time spent focusing on their English speaking was not a surprise either. And all of the time they characterized fans as very hysterical did not surprise me. Although I do wish they did a little less, especially calling us banshees. That was not appreciated. I was a little pleasantly surprised at how much they did talk about the diversity within K-pop fandoms, and I hope they talk about it more in the future. And hopefully that more diversity turns out in general and feels more open publicly, showing their fandom status. The more the merrier at these events, once it's safe to go back to them, of course. And how people discover the genres, in the industry, really, and Hallyu and all of that, and how it's all linked. K-culture, you get into the fashion, then you get into the games, or you get into the movies, the dramas, the music. It's all a huge package deal at these events. I found that really interesting, how much all these other aspects of Korean culture cause some fans to get more into K-pop, or vice versa, and that is just very exciting, and I hope that trend continues of appreciating more aspects of their culture than just the music, because there's so much there. I also found it interesting, just in general, how these collabs, like with League of Legends, really are doing a great job getting and drawing new fans in. And overall, I would say that the reviews on the whole were very, very positive. The vast majority of reviews of this event, whether you agree with certain depictions of fans or the events themselves or not, or whether you wish they had been harder on Chad or whatever, it's very, overall on the whole, I was pleasantly surprised at how accurate and just fair and I think positive a lot of the coverage of KCON was. And very all-encompassing, talking about all the different aspects of the convention and the concert, and a lot of variety in the fandom responses included in articles. So they showed a lot of the multifaceted nature of this event and the people there. And so overall, worth looking into. It was a fun little mini study I did, and I hope to do more of those in the future, just looking at culture at a glance, but also in a bit of an analytical qualitative way. And so I will probably do more of those mini studies in future episodes and always address the limitations. But this was, I think, a pretty good way to get a general sense of what the coverage has been like for the festival over time. And I'm very curious what the coverage will look like for KCON 2021. Cross your fingers for that to happen. So before I go, quick updates. Please, if you can, go to the Lebanon Red Cross's website to donate. That is the official place to donate. There are a lot of fake accounts coming up with alleged donation groups, but the Lebanon Red Cross is the go-to reliable, credible one, so stick to that, please, if you can. I would also recommend you read Glamour Magazine's latest piece, where they talk to 8 different journalists about what it's like to report while black these days and just be a black reporter, and it's really interesting and important. A lot of good eye-opening quotes in there, and I just want to continue to highlight these different pieces and bring attention to issues in the media throughout my episode. So that is something I really hope you all turn to read from Glamour Magazine today. So those are your updates for the day, and I will be back later in the week. I've got a lot of new episode content coming, some more original mini studies to talk about that I've already done, but also some that others have done, and I want to look at other research over time about fandom culture and whatnot. So we're really going to look at a lot of this stuff and break it down in hopefully entertaining, condensed ways. So thank you all for listening. Feel free to share the show, visit our new website, and all that jazz. And I will see you all later. Have a good one.